Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to tackle a really big idea from the Standards Australia Handbook on Security. What if pretty much everything we've been taught to think about risk is, well, just wrong? We're talking about a whole new way of thinking that gets security out of the back room and into the main office.
All right, let's just jump right in. I want you to think for a second. When I say the word security, what pops into your head? Is it guards at a gate, maybe a firewall on a computer, some security cameras? Well, according to the handbook we're looking at, if that's where your mind goes, you're only seeing a tiny piece of the puzzle. We need to zoom out a lot. And to really get this, the handbook gives us a perfect example. It's a scenario that, well, on the surface, it looks like a simple open and shut case. But when you start to pull on that thread, you'll see just how deep the problem really goes. So here's the situation. You've got a new manager who starts threatening a junior payroll officer. It's a classic abuse of power, right? A total imbalance. And what they want is pretty straightforward. They're trying to divert company money into their own personal bank account. Simple fraud. So here's the big question. Is this just a security problem? Do you just, call up the security guys, tell them to patch the system, and call it a day? The handbook says no way. If that's all you do, you're completely missing the point.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we have to talk about a really important distinction the handbook makes. It's the difference between a hazard and a threat. A hazard is something like, a natural disaster, a flood, something without human intent. But a threat, that's always human. It could be a deliberate crime, like our fraud example, or it could even be something unintentional, like somebody just being careless. And that is where security-related risk really begins. So why does that matter? Why split hairs between hazards and threats? Well, it's because most companies love to put things in boxes, right? They create these silos. Financial risk is over in this department, HR risk is over there, and security risk, oh, that gets its own little silo way off in the corner. And that, right there, is the root of the problem.
Yeah, this is the traditional way of looking at it. The thinking is, oh, there's a bad guy involved? Okay, stamp it. Security risk. And then what happens? They just toss that problem right over the wall to the security team and say, here, you fix this. And the security team is supposed to come up with some security solution, maybe a new rule or a piece of tech.
But the handbook is really clear on this. That way of thinking is it's incredibly short-sighted. Because when you just focus on that one single action, the fraud itself, you completely ignore the whole web of failures that let it happen in the first place. It's not about the one bad thing that happened at the end. It's about all the little things that went wrong leading up to it. So let's go back to our payroll example. When you look at it with this new perspective, that one little security problem it explodes into something much bigger. Suddenly you see, wait a minute, this is an HR risk. There's bullying going on. It's a compliance risk. It's an integrity risk. Why wasn't this manager screened properly when they were hired? It's an IT failure, a governance failure. You see, it's this whole cascade of problems touching almost every part of the company. And that right there, that brings us to the absolute heart of what the handbook is trying to teach us. It's a total shift in how we look at these things. And it all starts with changing the words we use, because that changes how we act. This is so important. If you slap the wrong label on a problem, you are guaranteed to get the wrong solution. It's that simple. The moment you call this just a security risk, you've basically given every other team, HR, finance, IT, you name it, a get-out-of-jail-free card. They can all just wash their hands of it and say, nope, not our problem. And the real root causes, they never, ever get addressed. So what's the solution? The handbook suggests something that sounds really simple. Instead of security risk, we should be saying security-related risk. I know, it sounds like a tiny change in wording, but it's actually a huge deal. That one word, related, forces everybody to admit, okay, yeah, security is part of this, but the problem touches all of us. The causes and effects are spread all over the place. And what that does is it forces you to ask a much better question. You're no longer asking, how do we stop this one security threat? Instead, the question becomes, okay, how does this whole situation affect the entire company? Our finances, our people, our legal standing? It makes you connect all the dots. All right, so this all sounds good, right? It makes sense in theory. But how do you actually do it? How do you put this into practice? Well, the good news is the handbook doesn't just leave us hanging. It actually gives us a roadmap. So take a look at this. This is the model they lay out. And what I want you to notice right away is that protective security, the classic stuff, the guards, the firewalls, it's just one part of this whole thing. It's not off in its own little box anymore.
It's right in the middle, totally connected to everything else around it. And this whole framework really rests on four main pillars. It has to start with culture. I mean, do people in the organization even want to do the right thing? Then you build on that with governance, the rules of the road. Then you have risk management that sees the big picture. And only after all that's in place do you layer on the protective security, the specific tools and controls. You see? Real security isn't just one team's job. It has to be woven into the fabric of the entire organization. Okay, I get it. This might sound like a bunch of abstract corporate speak, but I promise you, this way of thinking has real-world, practical value for pretty much anyone, no matter what your job is. Because here's the bottom line, the thing you really need to remember. Big disasters, they almost never come from one single giant mistake. It's almost always a chain reaction. It's like a line of dominoes, a bunch of small, overlooked risks that just tip over one by one until you have a full-blown catastrophe. Thinking in terms of security-related risk, well, it helps you see those dominoes while they're still standing.
So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. Think about your own world, your job, your team, maybe even your own personal life. What's one risk that you've been stuffing into a little box that actually has tentacles reaching out everywhere? Because spotting that interconnectedness, that's the very first step to becoming genuinely secure and resilient.